There is already a schedule for how we're going to present the topics we're going to talk about. My name is Vassilis Gkisakis. I'm a researcher in ELGO-DIMITRA from Kalamata, Greece. So I'm going to coordinate also the discussion today. There are actually three parts in our webinar. First, I'm going to give a general framework on concepts and applications regarding the conservation and use of agricultural biodiversity, focusing on olive groves. Then I will give the floor to Carlos Ruiz Gonzalez, which is a colleague environmentalist working as an officer in the Spanish Ornithological Society. He's also the responsible of the project Olivares Vivos that takes place currently both in Spain as a second phase, a second part, but now being international, also being implemented in Greece and other countries. In regards to the biodiversity and the improvement in the olive agroecosystem. And later, we're going to have some time for discussion, questions and answers through chat. But if you notice the menu of Teams, it also gives you the option of posting questions in the Q&A section. Again, kind request to keep the camera and microphones off, so all questions can be done through the chat, or if you feel more comfortable, through the questions and answers. So I'm going to start the presentation. Carlos, because I cannot really see the menu, if there are other attendees, to please accept from the lobby to join the webinar. So, small introduction about ELGO-DIMITRA, which is a main Greek organization working on agricultural research and innovation, including 11 institutes all over Greece, implementing lots of research projects and programs with tens, hundreds of fellow colleagues, researchers. I'm going directly to my institute, which is the Institute of Olive Tree, Subtropical Crops and Viticulture. The work done here is mostly research and innovation on the main, let's call it Greek Mediterranean crops like olive, citrus, even subtropical crops, as well as vine and horticultural crops. There are different departments all over Greece, as you can see. Two of them are located in Crete, in Chania, where is the main unit, as well as in Heraklion, in Kalamata, where I'm located, based, and also in Athens and Lesbos Island. So, lots of activities related to olive oil quality, physiology, nutrition, pest and disease control, soil water management, and eventually sustainability and agroecology for the farming systems. One other main activity is the conservation of all these main tree crops, including olive, citrus, grape, figs, and even subtropical varieties. And as an institute, to have a role as national collector of this plant genetic material, working on producing certified, standardized plant material that can be delivered then to the farmers and nurseries. Lots of research projects are implemented. This is just a small list of certain projects, including, of course, Olivares Vivos, that I guess Carlos is going to analyze further today, and that we are working with in partnership with lots of research and academia institutes all over EU and Mediterranean. I would like to give the floor to Carlos so he can say a welcome and give us a small introduction for today before I move forward. So, Carlos.
Hello, thank you, Vassilis. As Vassilis said, I am working in the Spanish Ornithological Society. I'm the technical coordinator of this project, Olivares Vivos, that is running right now its second stage. We have had the support of the LIFE project twice through two different programs. And yes, then in my presentation, I will go deeper on this. So just to say hello, everybody, and I give you the floor back.
Okay, thanks. So, I mean, the keyword here is, the keywords are two actually. It's biodiversity, as they can be used in the olive groves. I mean, it's the issues that the keywords of conservation and use, and how we can see biodiversity as an asset for olive production, olive farming, and also but as a tool. So we can conserve it, we can use it as an asset, but also have it as an asset, but also use it as a tool for olive farming. I will give you some data here, like small figures that give us an image of what's happening at the Mediterranean basin. I mean, you can see that we have a simultaneous hotspot, a hotspot of both biodiversity. I mean, you can see the image on your left part of the screen on the main areas, which includes the whole Mediterranean basin of a high number of species. And of course, on the other side is the main olive farming areas, and you can see that both of them are coinciding. So it's kind of opportunity, but also responsibility to have enough, I mean, to support olive production, but also biodiversity. Again, as some small definitions that when we say biodiversity, what do we mean, especially the agricultural one? We talk about all these elements out there of genes, species, including insects, plants, mammals, whatever, but also ecosystems and even habitats related to the agricultural systems and the food system, the agri-food system. One important thing maybe to stress here is that there are several interactions between all these different elements of the ecosystem, which is also very important when we want to use the biodiversity as a tool for olive farming. There is a kind of differentiation, categorization of what do we mean by diversity, how we include it in different categories. So it is categorized in the so-called genetic diversity within species, also between species, and at the level of habitats and ecosystems. I'm going to use this categorization in this presentation to give you also some examples. And then it's very important to mention, given also yesterday's International Day of Biodiversity, that this concept of biodiversity is included within the 9 planet boundaries, which defines how safe the Earth system is in terms of humans for functioning and delivering several services. So you will see that already biodiversity plus other 5 boundaries have been violated. So meaning that we're now in a kind of non-safe area for the way that the human system and the ecosystems in general are functioning. I mean, the numbers are not good at all. I guess you know that we have a big crisis of biodiversity loss. We already have indexes that define that biodiversity has been greatly reduced during the last decades. You can see some results of the last recent results of how the general species in terms of freshwater, marine, even terrestrial has been reduced the last 40 years. Also focusing then in some invertebrates as well as Lepidoptera, how they have been restrained, I mean, reduced the last decades. Of course, this is a very worrying, and this is something that it's already in the mind of many, not only scientists, but also policymakers. So the thing is, whom to blame, kind of. I mean, who is responsible for these results? Agriculture, farming plays a main role on this effect. I mean, together with the overexploitation of natural resources, is the 2 main threats for biodiversity as they are defined. And you can see here the results from Nature publication from 2016 regarding number of species that have been threatened under these pressures, overexploitation and agriculture. Again, some predictions, some projections in the future show that agriculture will keep stressing biodiversity. As you can see, from 2000 to 2030, there is an increased percentage of biodiversity that is lost due to agricultural activities. So agriculture too has a main role to play here. And when we say agriculture, we should define it better, giving the constraining a little bit rather to the modern way of farming, the modern industrial farming with lots of intensive use of natural resources like water, soil. It is already recognized that this kind of farming, the industrial one, that is the one to give responsibility for loss degradation of main resources like soil, biodiversity, etc. So biodiversity also includes, as I said previously, the genetic diversity of cultivated plants, cultivated varieties. It's already again recognized that has been an irreversible loss the last decades, especially within the 20th century after the Second World War, of the most of agricultural varieties due to the dominance of main commercial competitive varieties, which actually push to the side the use of non-competitive heirloom local varieties that were used broadly by farming communities. Another dimension is the dietary diversity, meaning that we unfortunately use only very few species and crops to feed ourselves when there are a great multitude of options of plant species or even animal species that can be used for dietary purposes. But last but not least is also that we have this connection that was been already accredited between the agri-food system and biodiversity loss in terms of the emergence of pandemics like it was some years ago, the COVID-19. I mean, the destruction of habitat and the loss of biodiversity is again one to blame for creating the conditions for the emergence of such large-scale pandemics. All right, so I mean, going back to our topic, and especially for olive farming, we have a challenge here. I mean, how can we support the biodiversity that exists out there, and how we can use it in the olive agroecosystem? One main thing that could be stressed here is the thing that Miguel Altieri, one of the most referenced agroecologists from previous decades, mentioned that we should consider biodiversity, that it matters not only for reasons of nature conservation, conserve some maybe flag species on some ecosystems, but also we should focus on the function it has for agriculture, that biodiversity can provide services related to production, farming, agricultural production, also environment, and can really contribute to more sustainable farming and sustainable production methods. So this is something really important to consider, especially when we should communicate this to farmers, that maybe we should order or to the general public. I mean, what is the value of biodiversity for farming? So there are lots of ecosystem services that they are called, provisioning, regulating, supporting, and cultural, that are delivered from biodiversity, especially when it is enhanced, restored. It also should be considered that ecosystems, including the agricultural ones, the farming systems, become more stable and resistant when biodiversity is restored and improved. So we start talking about specific functions, and we talk about functional agrobiodiversity, which deliver general functions like the stability, as it's mentioned, and the resilience, but also very specific important functions that farmers can really join and estimate, like biological pest control, fertility of soil, prevention of soil erosion, pollination, and eventually productivity. Productivity is a main aspect for farmers, especially olive farmers, that it is considered. There is already enough knowledge and enough studies that demonstrate that when biodiversity at several levels is reduced, we also have a productivity reduction. I mean, I refer to a paper, a publication, scientific one from colleagues from Spain, demonstrating that the large-scale simplification also increase the olive fly populations and give this step to reduce productivity. Also, this has an effect on other loss of natural resources like soil, especially when it is combined with non-proper soil management. We have lack of cover crops, lack of vegetal flora diversity in the olive groves that generates conditions like the one that you see here with extreme soil erosion, especially in slopey areas and the olive groves. So, talking about solutions, I mean, one main approach that maybe the first and foremost to consider for restoring and using biodiversity in the olive, in the farming system of the olive farming system, especially, it's agroecology, which actually is defined like designing and manage biodiverse, productive, and resilient farming systems based on ecological principles. So it could be regarded as a holistic approach, where it defines, classifies, and studies these systems from both an ecological but also socioeconomic perspective. So it becomes more integrated, more holistic, as I said. It's important here, I give you here the levels of transition defined by Professor Glisman, where we see that the redesign of the agro-ecosystem is a very important transitioning towards truly sustainable agroecological agri-food systems. And you can also see that the FAO elements and principles by the high-level panel of experts which gave a very robust framework of what agroecology really is, how much it stresses diversity, biodiversity for accomplishing this transition towards truly sustainable farming systems. Again, here I give you some more methods that you can see. Biodiversity is a main approach to consider for building an agroecological transition. It's called that agroecology is a biodiversity-based approach. As you can see, that it gives both validity to restoration and conservation of biodiversity, including here restoration in terms of practices like polyculture, rotation, cover crops, or agroforestry, agro-silvopastoral systems. And on the other hand, also conserving biodiversity and natural resources that they are out there in the so-called associated biodiversity in hedgerows, corridors, and other elements of the landscape. So we use all these different species that they have a role, natural enemies, pollinators, decomposers, to increase the functions that they are provided in ecosystems, like pollination, biological control, nutrient cycling, and deliver eventually the ecosystem services like plant health, resources conservation, and eventually productivity. This is a general framework how the biodiversity conservation and use works within the agroecological approach. Now let's go directly to see what are the different levels and how they are used, different levels of biodiversity, and how they are used, each one of them, to enhance the olive farming system. As mentioned before, we had the genetic diversity. Yes, I mean, we talk about all these different varieties, in our case of olive, of the olive crop that exists out there, which is the approach as a pull tank, as a source of desired characteristics, which really can help us to adapt to local conditions. I mean, to give us all these traits, these characteristics that can make us face environmental pressures, environmental stresses that we're already facing with biodiversity loss, with climate crisis, etc. And of course, something that is also greatly valued by the farmers, that we can also have an added market value, a green value that can be given to agricultural products in terms of locality, of gastronomic tourism, protected designation of origin, etc. Talking about the work of my organization, ELGO-DIMITRA Institute, I mean, in Greece, at least, I guess it's the same also for all Mediterranean countries, there are the plant genetic material banks, the Greek gene bank, for example, of ELGO, which has been already evaluated to have a value of some hundreds of millions, depending on the different scenarios of environmental or even social stresses. Stresses like can be, of course, environmental ones like climate stress, or even social and political like wars or whatever, which I guess is also something we should be considered. And of course, the institute, IOSV, my institute also, as mentioned before, has the national collection of the olive variety in Greece, which is nowadays also included in the 8 collections of the International Olive Council worldwide, which was also a great step for this collection of olive varieties. It's managed by a colleague in the department in the unit of Kanya, Giorgos Koubouris. We had yesterday a similar webinar in Greek. There are, of course, projects that they are implemented, like Gen for Olive. This one was coordinated by the University of Cordoba, where also ELGO participated. Innovation action for how to use these olive genetic resources to promote activities that are very related to the use of genetic diversity for olive farming. again, something very recent is that also this is, let's say, there is some steering of this issue. As you can see now, we had this European Union, the OICAP network at European Commission focus group focusing on local perennial plant genetic resources. We had then a visit in the premises of ELGO in Chania, a meeting there with several experts all over Europe to see how we can make these perennial crops more attractive and profitable for farmers. So this is very indicative of how this genetic diversity for tree crops in general, for the Mediterranean and especially for olive farming, can be used. One main outcome out of this is like how to use genetic diversity was approaches that enhance the participation of main stakeholders like farmers. So participatory blood breeding, the PBB, is a main approach to have the collaboration of not only breeders, which can be also, the industry, the seed industry, but also farmers, in order to define better a blood breeding program with advantages also for the farming community. I go directly to the second level, species diversity, which is also very interesting because first we have all the species that can support, it's the associated diversity, the associated species as we call it, that exist in the natural habitats ecosystems and can really give a positive effect to our farming system, to olive farming system, like in terms of soil fertility, pollination, biological pest control, and others. We can also imagine that there is great diversity of microorganisms under the soil, like fungi, mycorrhiza, etc., the microbial community that can also really enhance productivity. As very small examples here at Quick, it's a very large topic, we cannot really cover everything, but we can imagine that there is an interaction between habitat species, flora species, and insect species that can really deliver all these services to agricultural production. I give you here some examples of Chrysopide, the related beetles, Coccinellida, or even Syrphide, and of course the bees, and how they are positively affected by the Phacelia species of plant that can be also released in purpose in the agricultural ecosystems in order to support the presence of all these important components that deliver services, as said, to the agricultural production. And another example is cover crops. It's a practice that farmers for centuries applied like as a green manure with several positive and advantages for the farming, for the olive farming and productivity. It decreases organic matter structure of the soil. It really can combat winds and erosion and increase species biodiversity, like having habitat species that can host beneficial insects, like we saw before, which is something a very important thing to consider. It's a practice very easily applied by farmers, which nowadays is one of the main practices promoted for several reasons, as you can understand. So it's something that we really try to promote through projects like the one of KALYTERA program that you can see here, which focuses mostly on table olives, but it can be applied, of course, in any other kind of olive crops, even for olive oil orientated. And last but not least, it's the diversification of the agroecosystem itself by combining many different crops or other auxiliary species, plant species. So we can have more than one crop in the olive farm. Of course, we should consider conditions of competition or allelopathy, which can affect our main crop, which is the olive. But also it's a matter of economic, financial aspects, like availability of the production to whoever the farmer is going to sell these products, and how he can rearrange his farm in order to have more crops and, of course, more labor, and of course, consider finding new markets. But it's an option, especially with systems like, let's say, more complicated ones of agroforestry, also why not permaculture and other approaches. Last but not least, again, is the level 3 of habitat and ecosystem diversity, which I guess Carlos can give us even more details on this. It's the level of diversity of biodiversity, which is less considered by farmers and generally practitioners, because sometimes it's difficult to understand why it really matters, why the importance. I mean, we should consider that at landscape level, at ecosystem level, all different interactions that happen there are influence the conditions and the interactions within the farming system. I mean, you will see now examples of how this landscape matrix, as it's called, provides resources, habitats that can really help beneficial elements of biodiversity to the functions of the farming system itself. Here there is some definitions like the spillover effect. We talk about movement of organisms, as you can see in the image, from the natural habitats surrounding the crop areas, and how they can disperse, move from the natural habitats can be connected with the crop habitats and deliver also positive functions. This becomes important because what is now recognized is that we have a great fragmentation and the reduction of the natural habitat out there. And this is very alarming because as it is already found out by the scientific research, is that when we have a decline in non-crop habitats in a landscape, which declines under, there is already threshold defined, 20%, then very important functions like predating or parasitism of beneficial insects to pests of our crop can be significantly reduced. So what is now given as a given fact is that when in the landscape we have a great loss of non-crop habitats, and there is no spillover across these habitats, the extinction of species, and we focus on the beneficial species out there, it becomes a dominant process. So this is very alarming, and this is something to consider for how we should again upgrade, enhance landscape diversity in order to safeguard the positive functions for the crop habitats, for the farming systems. Fragmentation is a main phenomenon found out there. I mean, how all these habitats, the natural habitats, are broken into pieces, which actually reduce the number of species that exist. And this is something that we also find when we study the olive agroecosystem, that we see that when there is a higher diversity in terms of habitats or landscape in general surrounding an olive farm, an olive agroecosystem, we have higher species diversity, and then more services are delivered for the olive production, the agricultural production. How we can enhance the diversity at habitat level? I mean, the main approach here is to develop ecological infrastructure. It's also called green infrastructure nowadays. We talk about elements at field or ecosystem level that provide habitats and, of course, food or hibernation sites to the commoners of our ecosystem that have a positive function for our production system. We talk about simple structures like insect hotels, water bodies, the hedgerows, the living fences, or even other places like stone piles that even constructed nests for the avifauna or even bat fauna that we can support them easily. I think it will be explained later with a low cost for farmers and the practitioners in general, and deliver very positive effects. So what we try to do is like to redesign the ecosystem, the agroecosystem, in our case, the olive grove, in order to incorporate basic structures that will support the conservation and use of biodiversity. All right, so I'm closing more or less here. You can see some examples of such infrastructure with some herbs and even insect hotels and water bodies and the nests for birds taken from the projects like KALYTERA program and of course Olivares Vivos, that Carlos will give us even more details about it. And I'm closing with this photo, which the last period I'm using because it's very characteristic of having two very differentiated olive groves, one on the right side of your screen, the gray one, let's call it, which will have a very compacted soil of the farm, rather badly pruned. I mean, it's corporate managed olive grove, which becomes in high contrast with the, let's call it the green one, which is part of a female businesswoman that is also the olive farmer, and how good we can see she participates in KALYTERA program and how good she applies some practices like cover crops, installation of ecological infrastructure, and also with very positive effect in the olive agro-ecosystem, but its productivity. So, thank you. This was a very quick way to give an overview of what biodiversity is and how it is connected to olive farming. Of course, we cannot cover all different aspects because, I mean, it's a matter of time and it's a very, very large topic that we should dedicate much more time. But I guess it already gives an idea. It also gives the opportunity, the floor now to Carlos to continue with a very concrete example of the project of Olivares Vivos. So I will give the floor to Carlos, if you can hear me. Yes.
Okay. Yes, thank you very much.
I stop sharing.
Thank you very much, Vassilis. I will start by sharing my screen. So give me just some seconds for that. I think now you can see my screen. Please confirm it.
Yes, it's okay.
It's okay. Now it's under full screen.
Also okay, yes.
So, okay. As I said before, I'm coordinating this Olivares Vivos project from my organization, the Spanish Ornithological Society, and I would like to go on with the same subject that Mr. Gkisakis was explaining about how we are implementing these agroecological measures in olive groves. And I would like also to explain how biodiversity conservation can help to improve in an agronomical way the farms, but also to increase in general the profitability of the farms. As it has been explained before, agriculture is one of the main drivers that is causing biodiversity loss. But at the same time that is causing this loss, it's also suffering from this biodiversity decline because this industrial model that the agricultural policies have imposed is having these consequences. So finally, the olive growers that they follow these agricultural policies, they are facing these environmental problems, and it's really a problem that it's affecting them. So we can call that this is a biodiversity crisis in the olive farming, and at the same time, at least traditional olive growers, they are suffering from an economical crisis because many times the prices are below production costs and they cannot compete with other kind of olive growing like intensive and super intensive, which cannot be implemented everywhere. So we have been working in this project in Olivares Vivos for nearly 10 years. We have had, as I said before, the support of the LIFE program twice. In the first project, we have three main goals. First was to develop and to test a model, an agro-environmental scheme to check if it can really recover biodiversity. Then we wanted to explore different strategies to improve the profitability in the farms. One of these strategies, we will see it later, being the added value of a way of managing the farms. And the third one was to establish a certification system based on the outcomes of the project. So with this strategy, we could address these two problems, the biodiversity crisis and the economic crisis at once. So we are now in the second stage, in the second phase of the Olivares Vivos with another O-live project. And we are now replicating, there is a microphone open somewhere, so if you can please close it because it's okay now. So another in this second phase, we are replicating this model in other olive growing regions, because in the first stage we worked only in southern Spain, in Andalusia, and in this second stage we are replicating the model in other olive growing region like southern Portugal, some areas of Italy, and as Gkisakis said before, in Peloponnese and in Crete. Before we started in the first project to design or to test an agroenvironmental scheme, we needed to know what are the main causes to this loss of biodiversity in the olive groves. And we found out that it depends mainly on two main factors. First, the absence of cover management, and second, the loss and the simplification on the landscape, the loss of landscape complexity. The results shows, modeling the results of biodiversity monitoring, that the absence of herbaceous cover is the responsible of the decline of the 10% of biodiversity, while the landscape simplification causes an additional 20% reduction in diversity. So knowing this, we decided to test this agroenvironmental scheme. So what is this scheme exactly? The concept is very simple, and it's based in many of the principles of agroecology that has been presented before. It's based on three fundamental lines of work. That the first one is to ensure a sustainable management of herbaceous cover, a cover crop with an agronomic focus, but trying to maximize its ecological function. The second pillar is the restoration of non-productive areas within the farms, which in this kind of farms like olive farming with permanent crops, there are many of them compared to herbaceous crops. There are many roadsides or many gullies or streams. And the third key aspect includes the installation of this different structure that can help and can support fauna and enhance their return and improving connectivity, like nest boxes, ponds for amphibian, water troughs. As you can see, all these techniques and actions in these three lines of work are really simple. They are easy to understand. They are usually easy to implement, but they should be implemented differently depending on the conditions of the farm. There is not a single solution, a single recipe, but adaptive plans for different farms should be developed, adapted to different conditions and environmental contexts. Since the beginning of the project, we had a very clear idea that this agroenvironmental scheme needed to be based on results. So to test effectiveness of the restoration actions, we selected several indicators, and we have conducted rigorous monitoring, including not only the presence or absence of different species, but also analyzing their ecological functions and the ecosystem services each group provides. This monitoring takes place at different times of the year, depending the type of indicator, and the monitoring is carried out before and after the implementation of the actions in the demonstration farms. These studies provide us with a very valuable set of data, which, as you will see in a few minutes, have been complemented with a strong line of research that has focused on, as I said before, biodiversity functionality, the ecosystem services provided, and also trying to link these results with recommendations for agriculture and environmental policies. Overall, the results of the implementation of this agroenvironmental scheme have been really positive, with species richness increasing by around 7% and abundance by approximately 18%. But it is also important to highlight that these results were obtained in just 3 years after the interventions. Currently, we are analyzing the results of a midterm monitoring that we have implemented in the first demonstration farms, these farms from the first stage of the project. And we have already started a post-operational monitoring of the farms that joined the project in the second stage. So in a few months, we will have a new set of data and results that could confirm or could give us results in a longer term. So knowing this now, I would like to focus a little bit of how can we connect this biodiversity restoration that's I have said is really the easy part of the project. I mean, to implement these action plans is not really difficult, but it needs care and attention and involvement of the farmers. But I would like to highlight how we can connect this biodiversity restoration to profitability. I like to explain this in 3 ways. No? There are 3 main ways that this connection can happen. The first one is the economic support from agricultural policies, which increasingly reward environmental services provided by farming. Then there is the input cost reductions that could be reached through improved ecosystem services. And then we have this added value of the products, which in our case, we try to achieve through the Olivares Vivos certification seal. So if we check a little bit more in detail these 3 lines of profitability for the farms, I can say that farms that implement the Olivares Vivos model or other agroecological model, they meet more easily the different criteria of eco schemes and eco schemes payments and other interventions that they are right now under the Common Agricultural Policy and the rural development programs. And it is expected that further reforms of the Common Agricultural Policy will go harder on this criteria of environmental results. Then we have, as we have seen before, these ecosystem services that help us to reduce many of our inputs. During the first phase of our project, the demonstration farms managed to reduce pesticide use by 20%, which is quite a lot. And as I said, this was only 3 years. You can understand that this wasn't only due to increased ecosystem services, because in 3 years they were not time enough to boost so much the ecosystem services, but it was also due to a shift in the farmers' mindsets, because by engaging in these restoration works, they became more observant and more precise in for instance, in the use of pesticides, and they moved away from calendar treatments, we can call them, and they started to applying chemicals only where this application was absolutely necessary. Right now that we are doing this midterm monitoring, we are checking that the pest incidence is being reduced near the areas that we restored like 7-8 years ago. And additionally, in general, created more complex agroecosystems improves the resilience and the ecological stability, and this as it increased with ecological complexity. We can see some examples of how these ecosystem services can help. For instance, when talking about these cover crops, this herbaceous cover, the maintaining of the herbaceous cover increases the water infiltration. It helps to reduce evaporation. It makes water use more efficient, but it also is an excellent investment for improving nutrient availability, because they improve soil structure, they increase organic matter, they promote better composition of microorganisms, and so on. Then another ecosystem services that can be enhanced with this kind of practice is the biological pest control that also Vassilis Gkisakis has mentioned before, because the olive groves, it's also a native species from the Mediterranean. It hosts hundreds of beneficial insects, and most of this control is done by different predatory, parasitoid, or parasite species like spider, ants, wasps, or lacewings. For example, certain wasps are parasitoids that specifically target the olive fruit fly larvae, and these wasps that are parasitoids usually depend on native vegetation for shelter or for alternative food source. So preserving these productive area, these non-productive areas in a good condition is crucial for maintaining this healthy population of beneficial insects. Another example, now focusing in the control of the olive moth, the Price oleae. It's known that the lacewings are effective fighting the olive moth, but they are much more effective in olive groves with herbaceous cover. Keep in mind that it's the lacewing larvae that prey on the olive moth, but once they become adults, they need flowers to feed and to reproduce. So if we have these flowers, we will have also a healthier population of this species. Another important benefit of this herbaceous cover and the fauna associated is that they can also help to prevent or to reduce the incidence of some diseases. For example, when olive groves have vegetation from the crucifer family, like white master or Diplotaxis, the incidence of verticillium wilt drops significantly. In fact, it can be reduced almost to the half of the amount of verticillium that is in the soil. When we are managing a farm with bare soil, it can multiply more than sixfold. So there is a huge difference just by managing the cover crops in a smarter way. And there are some curious examples that they are not still explored, but they give us an idea of the potential of, in general, how these ecosystem services can work. For example, there are some plant species that help to repel the Philaneus spumarius, which is the primary vector for the short distance spread of Xylella fastidiosa. And on the other hand, there are some species like the white mustard that attract these insects. So we could use them as in a strategy or of bait and trap plants if we want to manage this vector. So this was just some brief ideas of and examples of how these ecosystem services can work. We have reviewed these first two lines of profitability for the olive groves, being more ready for agricultural policies, the ecosystem services, but then there is a very important one that is this adding value to products, and we believe that this is a crucial factor in profitability. If we work in agriculture, we have like two main ways. We can focus on production and product a lot at the lower cost possible, but then we alternatively we can use the second strategy, which is to be different, to offer a product that is different, so its price is higher, so the margin for profitability is also higher. We are working this with the Olivares Vivos certification that informs the consumer that the product comes from farms that have increased biodiversity, and this is something that many consumers really value. The producers we are working with, they have already reported different benefits, such higher demand for bottled oil, in comparison with the bulk amounts that they are selling, which offer usually better profit margins. They are also seeing that they have now the ability to increase selling prices or to access to new markets, particularly in some countries where the consumers are really aware and concerned about the environment, like South Korea, like Germany, like Nordic countries, and so on. So this is, in general, one of the main areas of work in our project, but it's to explain all this part in detail will require also an entire presentation on its own. So I won't go now into it. But have in mind that this added value, this differentiation strategy is really, really important. I would like now to present some specific results that we have obtained during the last year, because previously I have show you some examples on how ecosystem services can help the farmers, but I would like you to present some specific results we have obtained from our research in the project. A crucial finding is that the size of the farm matters less than expected. We have the idea at the beginning of the project that we needed to work in big farms or big combination of farms to really have an impact. So to work in a landscape scale, which is important, of course, but our data shows that biodiversity can be recovered also in small farms, which is something significant given that most olive farms are under 3 hectares or even less, depending on the countries or the regions. Therefore, it is essential for agricultural policies to promote this type of environmental schemes on small farms. Regarding pest control, our monitoring results with ants have shown that they serve as a significant predator of pest species. That was something that we were not really aware of this. We have observed that attack rates over 20% or nearly 30% in some cases at rate attacks over the total of prey available. And the presence of herbaceous cover boosts these rates, particularly for olive moth control. Therefore, we recommend extending herbaceous cover management practices to enhance these ecosystem services and emphasize that ants should be regarded as beneficial insects when we design and implement environmental schemes. Also, we have seen that small patches of floral species help to mitigate the effect of the absence of herbaceous cover. So farms that they were managed intensively without herbaceous cover, if they were leaving some small patches of flowers, they could reduce this difference with the farms with herbaceous cover. And this reinforced the idea that even small interventions in small farms can be really, really positive for biodiversity and should be encouraged. We have also analyzed the role of the insectivorous birds in pest control, and we have found that the effect was really lower than expected. And we attribute this to sometimes the lack of natural vegetation in the surroundings of the farms, and not only the lack of natural vegetation, but a poor composition of this natural vegetation. We have performed some experiments with some branch of the olives excluded for the birds, and these experiments confirmed that branches that they were accessible to birds had usually fewer pests compared to those one that were not accessible. But furthermore, the pest control was notably enhanced when it was in trees near natural vegetation zones. Therefore, we recommend incorporating small patches of natural vegetation and to create small patches in the matrix of olive groves, so they can act as stepstones to make the crop more accessible to birds, so we can enjoy from this ecosystem service. We have studied also solitary bees communities and their interactions with the different flower patches. And as with other indicators, we have seen that the intensification of the herbaceous cover management, that means the absence of herbs, and the landscape simplification negatively affected the pollinator flower networks. We have found out also that there are some specific, some species of bee that they are really good indicator of sustainable farm management practices, because they only are found in those farms that they are really well managed. Once again, maintaining herbaceous cover and diversifying the landscape are crucial recommendations regarding how to manage at the political level. We are currently analyzing the different small patches of natural vegetation that we have created in the non-productive areas and checking how they can influence different groups of fauna. And we are observing that even very small patches are heavily used by the wildlife. These fauna structures that have installed close to these patches, I mean these water troughs or the nest boxes, when they are installed close to natural patches, they show higher occupancy rates, and they are also occupied shortly after its installation compared to those ones that they are placed in the middle of the olive trees. This again highlights the importance of including small-scale patches of natural vegetation and fauna structures, and that, as I said before, the agro-environmental scheme is really easy, but it should be very carefully adapted to the conditions of the different farms, so checking which are the places with the best probabilities to be successful. Another topic that we have that we are learning since the beginning, since the project was born, is that we have held a lot of hundreds of meetings with farmers through courses that we have implemented, technical talks, field visits, and while we have observed that there is a general willingness among farmers to adopt more sustainable practices, many of them express their insecurity and their fear because they need more support and guidance. They are afraid of changing the way they are managing their farms and to lose productions or to lose income, and we should understand that it's their way of living. So we believe that it is essential to strengthen the training and the advisory programs, so to ensure that they can do this transition to more biodiversity-friendly practices in an easier way. So more or less, this is what I wanted to tell you. I don't want to go much farther from this, because I would like to give some room for questions and discussions. I have presented only part of the work that we are implementing in the project. We are many partners with many actions, and not only the project, but besides the project, each partner is also developing many interesting lines of work, as you have seen with ELGO-DIMITRA, or we are doing here in Spain. So I would like to leave this last slide with some recommended reference that has been cited before in the presentation, so you can find out more information about these results I have presented about different ecosystem services and different results we have found out, some additional information, and I would like to encourage you to visit our webpage because there is a lot of information there. We have a library sections, we have a section for training courses and so on. So, okay, this is it. So thank you very much for your attention, and I'm open to every question you may have. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Carlos. I think it was very comprehensive and very indicative of of all the benefits, that biodiversity had within the framework of the project. Personally, I also find very interesting, how it stressed the economic aspect. How can we valorize biodiversity for the olive farmers, which is the main topic, the main issue for them. They know they want to transform, they want to have a transition towards a more sustainable, let's say, way of farming, but then you also need the incentives. To mobilize themselves somehow with seeing that there will be also some added value to their product, which is the most important. I think you already answered the question if how they can find the literature and the references. You already shared the final list. Maybe it will be a good idea also to share about the presentations to the afterwards. So we'll take care of this. I also shared the link to the project olivaresvivos.com that you can see in the chat. Okay, I think maybe we can go now to the questions that have been already applied by the participants. So I'll take it from first, which is like I'll just please have your microphones off. So first question was about the cover crops, which I guess also it's relevant to my presentation about if I understand well, against the necessary moisture and water irrigation quantities, since water nowadays is scarce. What do we need to consider? Yes, a very quick answer to this is that cover crops are applied during the late autumn to late winter, early springtime. You will seed a mixture usually of cover crops, which can contain both some legumes and some cereals. Mixtures are always better. A typical mixture is like having some veg, Vicia faba, some peas, and some cereal like oat or any other. These are mostly applied late autumn, October, even November time, and they should be then sowed, cut it off before the flower season starts. So usually this goes to mid-March, and it is usually identified by having the legumes blossoming, having this purple flower of veg, for example, that indicates it's now time to start cutting them and to become green manure in order to avoid competition with the olive tree. So this way you avoid of again, as I said, competing the olive tree, and also it gives all the benefits that we described of cover cropping for retaining the moisture in the soil, and of course benefiting the olive tree in the important phase of blossoming. So I should not worry for competition between olive tree and cover crops when it's done properly. Carlos, I don't know if you have to add something on this from your experience.
Yes, I would like to add that, okay, I agree with you, but I would like also to say that if somebody thinks about sowing, to be very careful of what the different providers can sell us, and try to look always for species that they are local, that they are well adapted to our area. And in general, there is always the possibility to work with the local herbs, with the spontaneous cover crops that need to be managed. Because at the beginning, if a farm starts to work with spontaneous crops, they will grow different species, but we can manage this depending on the height of the cutting, the time of the year in which we are cutting, and finally we can get a composition that is, as you said, balance between different groups of species, and we can help it to be composed by species that usually they complete their living cycle earlier, so it will be easier also to cut it and to control it later.
Okay, let's move because there are some questions still to answer. So there's another question about the richness and abundance figures that Carlos presented regarding flora, herbs. It's mentioned that the richness increased, but the abundance did not have large increase. It was mentioned to be 13.4. What is this attributed? Why we have such influence? I guess 30% is not very small increase just in 3 years. But Carlos, any comments on this?
Yes. Yes. Okay. Have in mind that it's only after 3 years, and when we are talking here about herbs, because we have make the difference between woody plants and herbs. Woody plants were in the non-productive areas. Herbs were within the area of cultivation, and have in mind that many of the farms, because we have had different demonstration farms in different stages of implementing agroecology practices. Some of them, they were like starting, and they had really they have room to improve in abundance of herbs, but some others, they were in a very advanced way of implementing agroecological practices. So they were using 100% of the soil for this. So this is just the average increase in abundance. Of course, the farms that they were in a poorer state, they incremented much more than this 13%.
Okay, I think this should cover the question raised. Next question was from Marilena about regarding cultivation of medicinal and aromatic plants. Are there any experience that can be shared? I think it was all over the presentation, right? About the flora species that supported the beneficial insects. But Carlos, we want to start with something specific to include here, extra.
Yeah, we have worked really with, we don't try to focus on only in some species, like some other projects that they have tried to look for alternative cultivation. I mean, commercial cultivation that could be also done. We know that there are some experience of olive groves, for instance, combining olives with aloe vera plantations. There is a project here in Spain that they have combined the cultivation of olive with lavanda to produce commercially used lavanda. But in general, we have worked with a variety of wild species that some of them they could be used for medical or aromatic purposes. But in general, we prefer to work in a more diverse with a more diverse approach, so they can really boost it and increase the complexity of the agroecosystem, which is our main objective.
All right. There is another question which is relevant again also to the previous results that we saw. So if there are in comparison made between the benefits brought by native woody herb species made on the olive farms during the project. So I don't know if is there some data already between the different benefits by some comparison between how, as I understood, it's like what's the main benefits that different species of herbs and would the species deliver it. So,
I don't know if I really understand the questions. So
yeah,
between the benefits
made,
brought by native woods and herbs. So comparing the woody and the herbs, they provide. It's not which provide bigger or better benefits, but they provide different benefits. Usually, herb species, they help a lot with soil conservation and improvement. They provide a lot of flowers for pollinators and for different insects, while woody species, they also provide flowers for some species, but they can help much more other groups of fauna like mammals or birds, because they usually have fleshy fruits that are good for different birds, or they can provide also different kind of shelter for fauna. So it's a combination of the two of them which also boosts the benefits. So yes, there are different benefits for the two of them. It's not one better than the other. But what we need to have in our mind that we can work with herbs in the productive area, while we can only use the woody plants in the unproductive area, because this will be a problem for the agronomical practices, of course.
Yeah, like harvest and other
movement of machinery or whatever. Yeah,
exactly. Okay, there is a double question then about how we could extend the benefits of having cover crops, the cover crops period, as much as possible, even the summer. All right, yes, I mean, here it's a complex thing to consider. I mean, we also live in areas with high incidence of fires. We also have other research projects even that study this, that it's really recommended to decrease in the summertime the biomass available that could be ignite or fuel the incidence of fire. So from my part, the recommendation would be to have all this biomass already left on the soil, but not left like a herb, but like a plant, but cut it and sow it and leave it on the ground. So it will also reduce the available biomass for case of fire. So this is very important to consider, especially for semi-arid or even arid conditions of the Mediterranean, countries like Spain, Andalusia, Greece, South Greece. So will be my opinion. I don't know, Carlos, if you want to add something on this.
No, I totally agree with you. So yes.
Yeah. And then there's another question about the syntropic systems, about which called let's say in fashion or trendy, where include other species, tree species like eucalyptus or Chinese berry to increase biomass. All right, there is a comment on this that, okay, from my point of view, I mean, syntropic systems are more appropriate not for semi-arid or arid conditions of the Mediterranean. It should be more applied to tropical or other geographical areas. So I would really go for increasing the diversity of flora, species, plant species, trees, other trees. First, as we described it, through infrastructure, through living fences surrounding in the non-productive area of the olive grove, even also then diversify the growing system with polyculture. Maybe we can decide to have more than one crop in our farm besides olives. And I think this becomes also crucial now, depending the instability of the olive sector. So maybe diversification of crops and diversification of production can be some solution to this instability. But syntropic, maybe it's not the most appropriate to consider for Mediterranean conditions. Carlos, any comment?
I agree with you. I don't think that is the best ecosystem. and maybe it's better if you want to diversify your farm, to check if it's possible to have some part with olives, some part with vineyards, some part with I don't know, pistachia, or some herbaceous crops. If you have a plantation frame that is very wide, you can like go back to these plantations of barley or something like that, but not this kind of eucalyptus or very Chinese berry or this.
Look, I guess, I mean, the farmer is free to experiment, but it should be done securing first that it will not affect its productivity, its production, because it's not a hobby, it's a main profession. Yes, it depends, its family, and the income depends from securing that there will be production and profit from the farm, which is also very important. Then is a, I guess, more experience-related question in terms of what are the obstacles by local farmers on changing their land practices in the project. So I guess working with farmers, Carlos, you have experienced that issues of mentality, that and of course lack of information. But are there any other issues to consider, like a economic aspect or?
Okay, the first obstacle always is that what they are doing is working. They are afraid of changing to something that they are not sure about the profitability. And then, of course, I have said before, they don't want to do this alone. They want somebody to help them, to train them, to somebody they can ask questions, doubts. I mean, something with technical expertise and knowledge. And then there is a social factor that I guess that it happens everywhere. That is that they don't want to do it not only alone. I mean, without advising, but they don't want to be the only farmer doing this, because then there is a lot of let's call gossiping, that he's doing different things, why he's not doing things like we have always been doing that. Usually when there are several farmers doing this and the other farmers start to see results, it's easy that the copy effect can start to happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny how similar farmers are all over Mediterranean. They have sometimes to see the neighbor doing it successfully before they try to do it themselves. Well, I guess, but we mentioned the keywords. I mean, knowledge, training. Yes, this is very important. Otherwise, they feel blind on how to proceed, how to move forward with a distance for whatever novel, innovative practice. Yes. I think also something to consider here is that this can be linked also to the traditional agricultural knowledge. I mean, olive farms sometimes they do have the knowledge that some, I don't know, infrastructure or plant species are beneficial for them. So this is something to consider. Among that, living fences can be the fence surrounding the olive grove, or of course, the cover crops, the benefits of legumes. And this is a starting point, I guess, for working with farmers. Although we know it's very difficult. I mean, all of us that work directly with farmers out there in the field, it's kind of mentality, even, I don't know, psychological reasons, like social, as you mentioned, that it should be considered. So, yeah.
And usually the change from the changes that we propose, that they are more afraid is, of course, the cover crops. They are not afraid of planting a living fence or installing a pond or something like that. But of course, the cover crop is what it could affect their production. And it's something that it's true that if you don't do it properly at the beginning, and if you don't cut it early enough and so on, it can affect seriously the production. So we need to be extremely careful when advising doing this, by telling them that they need to be very aware of the proper time for the mechanical sowing of the weeds and so on.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, just to add here that another objection that we hear from farmers is that cover crops may increase humidity, moisture in the olive farm, and it may increase the presence of fungi-related diseases like cyclosporidium. So, but all right, I mean, this is not real. This is not true. I mean, there were experimentation in the past, and actually we intend to experiment this again, so to have robust results of how it does not really increase the humidity level up in the canopy of the tree. So, yeah, I mean, what should be kept here is we should be extremely careful what we ask from the farmers to do and how farmers are applied. I mean, it's not by coincidence; it's by correct planning. Aliki, maybe we should write the question. A colleague of ours raised his hand, so better because it's already many people, so better to write your question down in the chat. Okay, I will take advantage here just to show, to advertise maybe a couple of events that are very interesting. But I guess they are interesting also for the participants of our webinar. So I will try to share the screen and show you about the next event, the conference, scientific event that will take place in the, I don't know if you can see it, will take place actually in the area of Carlos, which I guess you can see it, right?
Yep.
So there is the International Conference on Sustainability in Olive Cultivation, take place in 25 and 26 of September, where it includes a Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services session. As far as I know, Olivares Vivos will be represented by Pedro Rey Zamora, yes.
Yep.
And of course, it's open because I already see there are colleagues here, even working in research, participating. That they could also there is an open call for submitting an abstract for a poster or for an oral presentation. Besides that, there is also something closer, which is even again relevant, but it's about agroecology. And next month there is the conference on the Congress of Mediterranean Agroecology in south of Sicily in Agrigento, where also it will be included a session on Mediterranean tree crops focusing on olive. And then again, we have the Agroecology Europe Forum in October, taking place in Sweden. And then next year, we have the symposium of the International Society for Horticultural Science in the faraway Kyoto of Japan. I know it's far away, but I should advertise because I'm in the scientific committee, and there will be a symposium on agroecology and systemic approach. So you are welcome to discover this and see, I mean, in case you would like to participate. So I'm stop sharing. So question of Aliki, is there any correlations between geographical settings and environmental contexts and the benefits from ecosystem services and agroecological practices? Yes,
yes, there is. Maybe still we don't understand really which is how it's working in terms of ecosystem services, because sometimes it's difficult to relate, but the results of the monitoring that we have performed before implementing action plans in this second stage, we have done this monitoring in Portugal, Spain, Italy, and Greece. It shows that the composition of biodiversity, it varies in terms of not only number of species and abundance, but also the composition. It's different for many of the groups, and of course this different composition will provide different levels of ecosystem services. Usually, if one species providing one ecosystem services is different, that is present in Spain is not present in Greece, usually there will be a similar species covering the same role in the ecosystem. but could be some differences. But in general, I believe that at the level of Mediterranean, there will be always a species that is offering this role, even if it's not the same for the whole Mediterranean.
Yeah, maybe it's a good point here to add that there is already a nature restoration law regulation at EU level that already defines some framework for working on restoring habitats and ecosystems. And of course, it has to do a lot with farming. So this is something also to consider. This was a very positive policy step, and it's very related to how we can assess, the correlation between the codex of benefits of ecosystem service and practices. There is a second part of the question about the general time frame that farmers would anticipate changes and solutions to problems. Any response to this?
Okay. In general, this should be a medium long-term strategy working line. You cannot expect to apply some agroecological practices in your farm and to observe changes in 1 or 2 years. You need 3, 4 years for the first changes and a long-term period to maximize them. This for sure. So it should be a strategy for the long term that you cannot jump from this strategy then to come back again to industrial agriculture. Then, so it should be something very, very well decided.
Yeah, I guess it's a pathway to follow rather than a silver bullet of magic trick that you have direct benefits in one day or in very short period. It's a kind of approach that should be followed to have long-term benefits. And this is also about sustainability, right? Okay, another question from Yannis about if there was a work on patch connectivity and any estimates on this, and if yes, how did you approach it? About connectivity of patches, I guess, of movement of species between patches or...
I know that some of my colleagues, they are working on this. We try to combine the connection of the patches through the better situation of the productive area. So you can have patches of woody vegetation connected because of the presence of cover crops. But really, I cannot answer now this question because this is something that it's being researched by my colleagues from the ecology team. That I am really not aware of this. And sorry, Vassilis, because there was a question before that I think we have forgotten from Fabio Gatti about if the ants. If we believe that the ants could work as biological control of the insect vector of Xylella fastidiosa. I don't have information about this. We have not performed any experiments with ants and the larva of this Philaneus spumarius. I suppose that Fabio Gatti probably knows, but just to clarify, I am not an expert on Xylella at all, but just to clarify that this vector is the responsible of the spread of the Xylella in only at the very local level. Usually when the Xylella starts to be a problem in an area, it's because some plants with the disease has been planted there. So just to clarify this, that maybe many of you know, but it's not the responsible of the spread of the Xylella all over the Mediterranean. This has been related with uncontrolled planting of plants that they are not really well analyzed and controlled.
All right, I think we have covered most of the questions already done by the participants. I should say that this event is already recorded, So with also the license of Carlos and everybody, we can post this and have it online for those that want to follow it again, to watch it again. And I can give you as well now in the chat. I will give you the link of the YouTube site where this the video of the day's webinar can be found. And also you can already see the video of the yesterday's webinar that for the Greek speakers that was held yesterday together with the colleague Yoros Koubouris from the same institute. So I guess there is material to take home. All right, I don't know if it's something else to add, Carlos. I think it was rather constructive way of interchanging here. I mean, seeing the questions and answer it. I don't know if there is anything else to add. I would like to thank you all for being here, especially Carlos for having this time to participate. Carlos, anything else to add? Any news or something to share that we should know about Olivares Vivos, next steps, trainings in countries or?
Yes, we have a training program that is focused to farmers that right now it's available in Spanish, but it's being adapted and translated to Portuguese, Italian, and Greek, and we hope that in the next months it will be available in these languages, and it will be announced in the webpage. It's totally free and online. So
I guess we have to follow you online on Facebook or other media or even the webpage.
And I would like you to thank you for inviting me to this interesting webinar and everybody for attending and for your questions and discussion.
Yeah, so really thank you everybody for being here. I hope it was at least pleasant and informative. And thanks again, Carlos. All right, so maybe we can stop here, yes. And as I said, the video will be online. We have your emails for those that choose to have more information in case we have further events in the future. And of course, follow these projects that mentioned, Olivares Vivos, etc., our institutes, our organizations, to have more information about it. So, thank you again. I wish you all a pleasant evening and a weekend. And hope to see you maybe in the next opportunity online, but even better in person, yes, in a conference maybe. So, Carlos,
Goodbye. Thank you very much.
So thank you. I think we can stop it here. Okay, I'm closing.